Hello, students. So there is a lot of content in this second paper, so I don't want to go into too much depth, but I wanted to show you some quick resources in the library for assignment 2. Um, Going back to the assignment sheet for assignment 2, I would argue that you probably are going to be using MCC's library for at least four sources. So your scholarly journal articles, your book or documentary, possibly, and then possibly your newspaper or magazine articles. What I tell students about the newspaper or magazine articles is that most of the major publications, like if you were like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, the big newspapers, give you a number of free articles online a month. So a lot of times you can just, search their website. They give you, I think it's 10 free a month. If you're an avid reader of these papers and you don't have a subscription, you might have to look for newspaper articles on MCC's library, because we do buy some of these newspaper and magazine articles. Now, when I say magazine on the assignment sheet, I mean magazine like The Atlantic is considered a magazine, not like In Touch or People magazine. I'm thinking of Time magazine, right? Something that has longer content. I tell students the difference between, in terms of newspaper and magazine articles, think about, so print journalism can often go into depth on a source in big ways. So like the New York Times, for example. Let's look at something. There is, let's see. Sorry, it's taking me a second. Okay, let's look at this article about Toys R Us, right? It's a long article that goes into depth, which is something you want for your annotated bibliography. You have to write 150 words summarizing, evaluating, and contextualizing these articles. The print journalism gives you a lot of information, and it goes in depth into some of this and might even give you some of that history or different sides. So that's really helpful. Versus like the TV journalism is often just pretty short and not in depth. So this is basically the same article, this Amazon Toys R Us thing. This is longer than the New York Times one, but this is pretty long for a CNN article. So a lot of times CNN just reports what happened. Let's look at this real quick. Let's see. So their articles are sometimes, that's nothing. That's really hard to write about. So I would caution you using any articles from TV journalists, because TV is not for consumption immediately. They're meant to report the news. There's certainly analysts on TV, but that's just something to think about. So again, the newspaper, magazine articles, get yourself some long form print journalism articles. And make sure you understand that these papers, right, the New York Times has a regular section and they have an editorial section. So when you're thinking about bias or you're thinking about opinions, the editorial section has that. So the opinion section, right? These people, these are all their opinions. Sometimes they're not well researched. These people often get these people on the editorial boards of, the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, they often have like a really cushy job that allows them to write weekly on whatever they want. And they don't get a lot of pushback from their editors. So, they get away with a lot more than the regular section of the paper. So keep that in mind. So that kind of takes care of the newspaper and magazine articles. Book or documentary. Book, anywhere, the library. You could, if you don't live near MCC, you could do your local public library. Maybe you're super interested in it and, there's a book you want to buy it on Amazon and you want to buy it on Kindle. That's really great. Same thing with the documentary, Netflix. You might even be able to, as long as it fits with your topic, use your documentary from paper one. So that would be a really great thing, right? So maybe you're doing mass incarceration and your documentary for the first one was the 13th. I'd use that because it's actually a really good idea. So you know where to find that. To find it, you know where to find it there. So this is the library guide for MCC's online students. It's linked in our course Paper 2 module. Finding books, articles, and more. So we go here and boom, it's got all of this information that helps you there. So you have to go to the library. They have videos upon videos, right? Totally helpful. So you can find a book through there. The next thing are the scholarly journal articles. I just want to give you kind of a preview of what they are. Scholarly journal articles are they're articles written by people most of the time with PhDs. Sometimes they're students, sometimes they're working professionals, but they're people who scholarly journals are super niche publications. Like, for example, my area of expertise in teaching writing and rhetoric, we publish in journals called that. There's, maybe 10 huge flagship journals, some smaller ones, but I send an article out to go publish in, say, for instance, Rhetoric Review, which is a journal in my field. They have an editorial board, a review board that they send my article off to, and 2 people read it and decide if it's good enough for publication. Most of the time they tell me to revise and resubmit it, and they give me ways that it would better fit the journal. I revise it, and then basically 2 years later, if it's completely accepted, it's in the journal. It can also not be accepted. So there's a process that the scholarly journal articles go through they're reviewed by experts in the field. So to find scholarly journal articles, you might want to go to one of the databases. For example, article databases tutorials. So any of these, EBSCOhost is a great one. I'll tell you my favorite. Academic Search Premier is one of the really good ones. Academic OneFile is good. Opposing Viewpoints is just that, which might help you get one source for your topic. Like, you might really need to get kind of the viewpoint, but it doesn't always have that. ProQuest databases, CQ Researcher is a really good one. JSTOR is a good one. And so what our library does is it buys into these databases that has some of this information, that have these scholarly journal articles, that house these scholarly journals. So, like, for instance, academic EBSCOhost it just buys a bunch of subscriptions to scholarly journals, and it copies them PDF. So all you have to do is log in through MCC, type in your stuff, type in your keyword, and then it'll come up with as many as you can, as many in scholarly journals. So keep that in mind. So that's that for there. Like I said, they have a lot of videos, tutorials to help you research some of these databases. And those are where I would go for the scholarly journal articles. Beyond that, you need 2 credible internet sources. It's up to you to decide what you think is credible. It might be that you're researching the opioid epidemic and you found a person's blog who writes about their experience with addiction. But it might, and it might be more than just like this, like they're credible because of their experience. It might not be a really shoddy blog. It might be a good professional one. So you might decide that it's credible, and that's great. Like, I think that's a good position to put in a paper on the opioid epidemic. In the evaluation part of that annotation, you just need to tell us that. You need to say, this is why I think it's credible. It might not be a scholarly journal article, but this is like 4 years of a blog of one person's struggle with opioid epidemics. They talk about getting services. They talk about things that researchers and journalists don't often get to do, and they're credible for those reasons, right? Like, it's kind of their street cred. So that's something to think about. So, so use, this is a research guide. So it's a guide. It's not actually the library. So you have to go to the library homepage, which for whatever reason, it's really difficult to get through here. But yeah, so this is where to go. Okay, so there's their website. Library. So there's all the searching stuff on the library, right? mesacc.edu/library. Library One Search, catalog, e-resources, journal finder, citations, all that stuff there. Now, the other really cool thing about this is if you have a question at any point in any time, like maybe you're having a really hard time finding a source or locating something, ask a librarian. We have so many amazing resources, but sometimes sifting through the dust, metaphorically speaking, because we're all online, is just really difficult. So ask a librarian 24/7. They'll get back to you. That is in a nutshell in our library, and kind of the breakdown of the different sources. Use this library guide to help you with the resources to finding stuff, and then obviously use the library's website. So thank you. Have a good rest of your day.